I want to talk today about Gambit. You know, when Gambit came onto the scene back in the day in the 90s, I won't lie, I thought he was really, really cool. Plus, he came with Storm, and Storm was vouching for him, so you already knew, he could sit with us. He had style, he had some culture, he was just different. And he knew how to move. He almost moved like Spider-Man in a way, which was kind of cool. Plus, anything he picks up can be a weapon. So, who doesn't like that kind of versatility in a hero? But we would come to learn more and more about Gambit as issues and years passed. And honestly, I kind of was on the fence about Gambit for a very long time towards the end of the 90s because I don't know. He had a lot of secrets. He had secrets on secrets. And I know, that's kind of the driving force in stories and the comics is, reveals and secrets, but some of his stuff was a little like, a little too. All right, guys, let's get into it. Remy LeBeau grew up on the streets of New Orleans. He was a street urchin. He got taken in by a guy named Jean-Luc LeBeau, who was the leader of the Thieves Guild and one of the thieving guild families there in New Orleans. So he saw a lot of potential in Remy. So he took him under his wing, and Remy quickly became one of his favorites. He was an amazing thief, and a lot of that had to do with his powers. So a lot of people understood that Remy was different, a mutant. His parents had kicked him out because they were afraid of him. His eyes are red and black, which is very different. But a lot of his manifestation of his abilities first came by way of his physicality. The kinetic energy that he stores in his body to charge objects to make them explode also give him a boost in speed, agility, athleticism on all fronts. And his brain even processes information faster, spatial awareness, things like that. So he's able to pull off feats almost like Spider-Man and kind of, do things that aren't normal, aren't natural for any person just to move with perpetual motion almost. So he was very good at what he did, which was thieving and getting in and out of places. It was there in New Orleans where he met Belladonna Boudreaux, who was the daughter of the leader of the Assassins Guild. So these two guilds will work together in tandem sometimes, but really don't really mess with each other. This was kind of like a Romeo and Juliet type situation. So they were tight from the beginning when they met, and they fell in love and they were going to, run away together. But Jean-Luc found out and was like, you don't even have to run away because this is going to bring the community together if you two get married and stay together. Unfortunately, Belladonna's brother did not like that whole idea and was pretty much trying to tear that whole thing apart and challenge Remy to a duel. Remy had to end up killing Belladonna's brother, which was very sad. And there was a lot of consequences that came from that. Remy ended up leaving versus trying to stay and fix things and put Belladonna through all that. So he basically kind of abandoned her. During his travels, he also would meet a young Storm who had been de-aged and was a teenager, and he would help her understand what it was like to basically be resourceful and be a scoundrel living on the streets. So he watched over her for a time until Professor Xavier was able to locate her, and they got her back to her regular age when she went to Genosha. Basically, he got his way into the X-Men by way of Storm by, taking care of, he does have a soft spot for kids. So he seemed on the up and up, which is cool. So he got in good, and immediately he was already at Rogue. He was trying to flirt with her, and over to the point where it kind of got kind of creepy and weird. I won't lie about that. I was like, okay, this dude is really laying it on thick, but that just became part of his character after a while. But it was kind of strange because Rogue couldn't really make physical contact with anybody, and it felt like almost torturous and kind of mean when he would do it at times. But I came to find out and see that, he really, really cared for Rogue. However, Remy has secrets, and one of the biggest secrets would come out during a series run called The Trial of Gambit. And Remy was attacked by a person that used to know him from the time when he was pretty much enslaved, working for this other guy named Pig. And he just felt like he was so guilty. There was a lot of guilt. He was acting differently. And Rogue had kissed him and was getting glimpses and flashes of certain things that she couldn't piece it together or didn't really want to. So it would come to find out that Remy had worked for Mr. Sinister. And even before this one incident, he had kind of went to him on several other occasions to get a little bit of money and try to get some funds. And one such time he was at the Weapon X facility and he witnessed what was going on with experimentation on mutants and even Wolverine being there. And he was there the day or the night that Wolverine broke out of that Weapon X facility, and he was there to grab something from Mr. Sinister. And then the other time was when he gathered together the Marauders from Mr. Sinister, a really elite group of mutants that were mercenaries and lethal hunters. He gathered together this group because he needed something from Mr. Sinister, and this was his payment to him. He also had to take them down to the sewers to find out where the Morlocks were. Now, I don't know if Gambit knew what was going to happen, but he couldn't have thought it was anything good. So they came across their dwelling, the Morlocks, and they were being slaughtered by the Marauders. And when Remy tried to step in and tell them to stop, Sabretooth almost gutted him immediately. It slashed him, almost gutted him right there. So he pretty much took a step back, and he was able to save one child, a girl named Sarah, who would grow up later as the mutant we know as Marrow. Gambit kept this secret to himself for years. He never told anybody, but it always ate at him. And finally, the secrets were out, and a lot of people were upset, especially Rogue and especially Angel. Archangel was the reason. This is the whole situation that kind of led to him going to Apocalypse, because his wings got injured by Harpoon so bad and eventually amputated, and he got depressed. He went to Apocalypse and got turned into a horseman for this whole situation. So Angel feels really, really betrayed by this. During this time, they were in Antarctica, and basically Rogue left him to fend for himself, but Gambit would eventually make his way back into their good graces after a period of self-reflection. But that wasn't the end of his messiness. Belladonna came back into the picture, revealing that those two had gotten married. There also was a external mutant named Kandra that factored into this whole mess, and Rogue was there to help him through it all, and just kind of sitting back and feeling like she was absorbing all of this things that she did not know about Gambit. And I think she started to get more of a full picture of who this person was. As time progressed, Rogue and Gambit do try to develop their relationship further, and there was definitely some rocky points because of the intimacy issue. They couldn't touch each other. They couldn't consummate that feeling that they have for each other. So that gets a little frustrating after a while. So they ended up getting some counseling with Emma Frost, and it probably ended up making things a little bit worse, and it didn't really go anywhere. There was also an incident where a student named Fox was trying to seduce Gambit, seduce him to the point where she came in the shower and tried to get it on in the shower. She was being really forward, and Gambit resisted. But it turns out that this student was actually Mystique, really messy. So she was like, well, I can be whoever you want. I can even be Rogue because I know that's what you want, and it's just to help you relieve that stress. Now, he denied that he accepted this offer, and Mystique alluded to that situation, but never confirmed or denied what happened. I like to believe that he didn't, but the fact that it was never completely cleared up was a little bit worrying, because Rogue was hot. She was hot money. It's probably the hottest that she's ever been, and that's her dang mama. So yeah, she thought that he was bad news and no good for her, and that's basically why she did that. Gambit also got mad at Rogue and blamed her for his injury when a card that he charged up exploded in his face during a battle. And Rogue was the only person on the team, honestly, that was checking for him. But he lashed out at her and blamed her for what had happened. He would eventually get his eyesight back, and the writers kind of didn't go too far with that. It was an ugly situation. I didn't like that. One of the dumbest decisions that Gambit ever made was to go to Apocalypse. This was after the events of M-Day, and mutant society was at an all-time chaotic level. Everybody was scared. Nobody knew what was going on. And Apocalypse had woken up from, it was just time. That was kind of one of those times in history. And he had the idea to basically support him because he knew he was going to get some horsemen and get some mutants under him. It might as well be somebody like him. And he felt like he could keep him in line and watch him in case he did do something out of line. He would be there. And he wanted to be not put under when the process of making him into a horseman went on, like he could control what happened. He was so wrong, and that was so dumb because he was a freaking scary zombie that only obeyed Apocalypse for a little while. This Death Seed Gambit version, he was the Horseman of Death. His powers kind of evolved, which was interesting. It's anything he would charge with his kinetic power, not only would that thing be destroyed that hit it, it would kind of disintegrate into nothing instead of just exploding. It was pretty wild and deadly. He also had the ability to corrupt other creatures and beings to pretty much enslave them and put them under his thrall. I think this is an offshoot of his charm ability, which I did not mention earlier, but Gambit also has the power to hypnotically suggest that you do things for him or you're amicable to him. It's kind of like a suggestive kind of push, and it only works on people that are susceptible to it. Like telepaths and stuff, it's not going to really work. Or once you're aware that he can do it, it doesn't really work. So I thought that was an interesting thing that he has developed. I don't know how that's an offshoot from his kinetic powers, but it is. And it's not the only time we see like an evil version of Gambit. We also got to see New Sun, which was a alternate reality version of Gambit where his powers had flared out of control and he basically burnt the surface of the earth to a crisp. So this is what would have happened had he not gone to Sinister for help. So this is where the forgiveness kind of came in for him going to Sinister for help, because he didn't know that that would happen, but it was a great fear that something like that could happen. And now it kind of makes more sense why he was so desperate to go to somebody like Mr. Sinister. So it kind of put things into context. Despite any secrets or shortcomings or, moments of lapse of judgment Gambit may have had, he is a good guy. He especially is very protective over children. I think this has to do with him being a disenfranchised youth himself and being abandoned by his parents, which had to be very, very hurtful and scarring to him. So he's always looking after the kids, and I do like that about him a lot. He is a hero at the end of the day, and nobody's perfect. And I just wish that he would have embraced all that parts of himself and shared more of him versus having it dragged into the light of day. He's also with my girl Rogue, who is my favorite, one of my favorites, top 3 for sure, X-Men. So I always want to have the best for her, and I think that he's getting there. They ended up getting married eventually in the comics, which was interesting because it was an issue where Kitty Pryde and Colossus were engaged to be married, and the day of their wedding, Kitty left him at the altar. Very dramatic. But instead of wasting the day, Remy proposed to Rogue and they got married. And I don't like that trope. I've seen it in movies and TV series. I think it's really tacky. I've always have, and I thought this was tacky as well. But maybe if I had somebody proposing to me in that same manner, I would feel differently. But I always thought it was kind of weird. Like, what? Like, pick your own day. But so they get married and they work through a lot of issues over the subsequent years. And Rogue learns how to control her powers a lot more, both with assistance from inhibitor callers or devices, and with dealing with her fears and repressed anxiety that allow her to touch Gambit and others, if albeit briefly, or and when the timing is right, but she knows that she can get it. She can eventually get there. And I thought that was a really great breakthrough. And they end up having their first intimacy. They get down, but they were interrupted by Carol Danvers, ironically. It's kind of like fate, like, yeah. So they are dealing with that, and their relationship remains strong. It's probably the most popular X-Men couple in Marvel. I think they're probably top of the pack, more so than Cyclops and Jean. There's a lot more merch for Rogue and Gambit than any other couple, and that's for sure. So that's what I wanted to talk about. Gambit is a complicated person, but what do you think about Gambit? Do you think he is just the same as everybody else? Do you think he's a little too shady? I do want to also talk about some of my fan castings that I didn't talk about in other videos. Lucas Bravo is somebody who I see it for Gambit. And Michael C. Hall for Mr. Sinister. I always thought would be a really cool Mr. Sinister. I just loved his turn in Dexter. And he has that really weird, creepy voice and subtle way. And you just know that he's up to no good. All right, guys. Thank you for coming back to Fandom Sage. I will see you on the next video. Please like, share, and subscribe. You're really, really getting me there. I'm going to get to 1,000 subscribers, I hope, within a month or two. That would be awesome. And it is all because of you.